A law that went into effect this year lifts some of the restrictions that local governments can impose on beekeepers. It's one way the state is getting involved to help protect bees. As Adam Pinsker reports, there are a number of threats facing the honeybee.
I'm watching for one to bring pollen in.
A third-generation beekeeper, Tracy Hunter, is in his happy place when he's with his bees.
There's nothing more enjoyable than just working in a beehive. It's a very relaxing time.
His sprawling honey farm outside Martinsville does agri-tours and is also a family business. He produces everything from sticks to honey candles.
Each worker bee only lives for about 40 days, about 4 to 6 weeks. And in her lifetime, she will produce 1/12 of a teaspoon of honey.
But bees in Indiana and around the world are in trouble, primarily because they're losing a lot of their habitat and parasites are destroying their hives.
I don't see any diseases.
In the 1980s, a beekeeper inadvertently introduced a parasitic mite into the bee population in Florida. It wasn't long before that mite reached Indiana.
We found out that they were vectors for viruses. And there's about 12 viruses that the mites carry and get into the honeybee's blood system.
Bees are also some of the largest non-native pollinators of crops in the United States. They pollinate plants, allowing them to grow seeds and fruits. That pollen is a food source for bees, but the areas in which the bees can get that pollen are becoming scarce.
So each one of these individual larvae will get a certain amount of the diet.
IU PhD student Audrey Parrish is among several people trying to determine the effect parasites, pesticides, and other factors like climate have on honeybees.
You can imagine a situation where deforestation and expansion of agriculture is knocking out the natural floral resources that these honeybees are typically experiencing. And because of that, they're not able to get pollen, and so the larvae aren't able to get protein.
Fellow PhD candidate Delaney Miller is trying to develop a microbe to protect bees from certain diseases.
I collect larvae from the field and rear them here in the lab. And then either subject them to this microbe or without it. And then I challenge them with fungal infection and see if they are more likely to survive fungal infection.
While honeybees aren't the only flower and crop pollinators out there, the loss or sharp decline of the species would have an impact on nearly everyone.
The number of apples that could be pollinated by the current populations of native pollinators would be smaller. And they would be extraordinarily expensive and outside of the price range that most people would be willing to pay or able to pay.
According to a survey from a national beekeeping industry group, in the 7 months between October of 2018 and April of 2019, 37% of managed honeybee hives were lost in the U.S. More than 24 states have passed laws to protect bees. Some states have placed restrictions on pesticides to try to help bees. Others have placed some bee species on protected lists. In May, Governor Eric Holcomb signed a bill that forbids municipalities from banning beekeeping in their cities. In Hunter's opinion, the law makes sense because an increasing number of Hoosiers want to start their own hives, and the law prevents any local government from getting in the way.
I would say in the last 20 years, backyard beekeepers or hobbyist beekeepers, those with 1 to 6 hives, they have increased tremendously, and now we have over 1,000 beekeepers in Indiana.
But Hunter says you don't have to be a beekeeper to make a difference. He says planting more wildflowers that attract bees and always buying local honey, not generic store brands, will help, as well as cutting back on the use of pesticides. He says it's more about an attitude change than anything else.
The American consumer talks out of 2 sides of their mouth. I think one, they say, I want to buy organic food. On the other side, they're spraying, they don't want dandelions in their yards, so they spray to kill the dandelions.
For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Adam Pinsker.